Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Here you go.
I believe this new approach could really transform our workflow.
I'm listening. Go on.
It streamlines the process and cuts costs significantly.
Jabari Mutiso had once been a successful man with a stable job. He had everything he needed, a job he loved, and a family that cared for him. But that all changed in a moment. One day, he lost his job. The company he worked for had to lay off employees, and unfortunately, Jabari was one of them. He had no backup plan, no savings, and no family to turn to for help. He found himself on the streets, struggling to make ends meet. Days turned into weeks, and the situation only seemed to get worse. With no job and no way to support himself, Jabari felt like his life was falling apart. One morning, Jabari was walking through a busy street in Nairobi when he saw something that caught his attention. A woman, sitting on the sidewalk with a small child, was holding out a hand, asking for help. The woman was ragged and worn, and her child looked sickly and hungry. Jabari felt a pang in his heart. He knew what it was like to struggle, but seeing this woman and her child made his problems seem small in comparison. Jabari looked down at his pockets. He only had a few shillings left, just enough to buy himself a small meal. But something inside him pushed him to do more. Despite his own hardships, he decided to give the little money he had to the woman. She looked up at him in surprise. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice full of gratitude. Jabari didn't expect anything in return. He just wanted to help. With a smile, he walked away, feeling a sense of peace that he hadn't felt in a long time. For the next few weeks, life continued to be hard for Jabari. He couldn't find another job, and the money he had was quickly running out. He kept thinking about the woman and her child. He wondered if they were okay, if his small act of kindness had made a difference. One day, as he was walking through the same area again, he saw the woman. But this time, something was different. She was standing by a cafe, dressed in clean clothes, looking nothing like the homeless woman he had met before. Jabari approached her, confused. "Are you okay?" he asked. The woman smiled and nodded. "Yes, I've been blessed," she said. She then told him that she wasn't really homeless. She had lost everything years ago due to a betrayal by someone close to her. But now, she had rebuilt her life and was successful again. The woman's name was Amina, and she was not just a beggar, but a local businesswoman who had been testing people's kindness to see if there was still goodness left in the world. Amina told Jabari that his selfless act had touched her deeply. She had seen how he gave away his last money, despite his own struggles. She knew then that Jabari was someone with a kind heart, someone who deserved a second chance. Amina offered Jabari a job in her business, and Jabari couldn't believe it. He had just given away his last money to a stranger, and now, that very stranger was offering him a new start. It felt like a miracle. Jabari felt a wave of disbelief wash over him as Amina made her offer. He had gone from being jobless and struggling to being presented with a real opportunity to rebuild his life. At first, he hesitated. How could someone who had just met him offer him a job in their business? But then, as Amina spoke about how his kindness had reminded her of her own struggles and how it had changed her, Jabari felt a sense of hope stir inside him. Amina had been in his shoes once. She had been betrayed and left with nothing. But she didn't give up. Instead, she fought to rebuild her life. Now, she was successful, and she wanted to help Jabari do the same. She saw potential in him, a man who had given away his last bit of money to a stranger. That kind of selflessness was rare, and it meant something to her. Jabari, still overwhelmed, accepted the job offer. He wasn't sure what the future would hold, but he knew this was a chance he couldn't pass up. He had nothing to lose. His days of living on the streets and wondering where his next meal would come from seemed like a distant memory as he walked into Amina's office for the first time. Amina explained the job to him. It wasn't going to be easy. The business was still growing, and there were many challenges ahead. But Jabari was determined. He was tired of feeling lost and hopeless. For the first time in weeks, he felt like he had a purpose again. He worked hard, often staying late at the office to make sure everything was running smoothly. As time passed, Jabari proved himself. His natural ability to lead and his dedication to the work earned him Amina's trust and respect. Days turned into months, and Jabari found himself slowly rising through the ranks. His life was no longer about just getting by. It was about building something, about having a future. Amina had given him more than just a job. She had given him a second chance at life, a chance to make something of himself again. But the road to success was not without obstacles. There were times when Jabari doubted himself, when he felt like giving up. But Amina was always there to encourage him, reminding him of the selflessness that had brought them together in the first place. She believed in him, and that belief fueled Jabari's drive to keep going. As the business continued to grow, so did Jabari's confidence. He became more than just an employee. He became a key player in Amina's company, helping her make decisions and guiding the business through difficult times. He had come a long way from the man who had lost his job and his hope. As Jabari's confidence grew, so did his role in the company. He worked tirelessly, using the lessons he had learned from his past struggles to help Amina's business grow. The bond between them strengthened, and it became clear that they made a great team. Amina trusted Jabari with more responsibility, and he never let her down. With his help, the company began to thrive. The business expanded, and Jabari's hard work was finally paying off. However, despite all the progress he had made, Jabari could not shake the feeling that something was still missing. He had come so far, but there were still questions nagging at him. What had really happened to Amina? How had she lost everything and been left with nothing, only to rebuild her life so successfully? Jabari was a man of curiosity and integrity, and as he worked closely with Amina, he couldn't help but notice the way her eyes would cloud over whenever the past was mentioned. She had been through something painful, something that left a lasting mark on her. He needed to know what had happened to her. One evening, while they were reviewing some business documents, Jabari decided to ask. "Amina," he said, his voice careful, "I know you've been through a lot. But what happened? How did you end up on the streets?" Amina paused, looking at Jabari. Her expression shifted from one of calm composure to something more guarded. For a moment, Jabari thought she wouldn't answer, but then she sighed deeply and set down the papers she had been holding. "It's a long story, Jabari," Amina said softly. "I was betrayed by someone I trusted, someone I thought was my friend. I lost everything, my business, my home, everything I had worked for. I was left with nothing." Her voice trembled slightly, but she quickly regained control. "That's when I decided to fake being homeless. I wanted to see who would help me, who would still show kindness even when I was at my lowest." Jabari listened carefully, his heart aching for Amina. He had no idea the extent of her pain. She had worked so hard, only to lose it all because of someone she trusted. Yet, despite everything, she had found the strength to rebuild her life. Jabari admired her resilience and determination. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" Jabari asked, his voice full of concern. "I needed to see if people were still capable of kindness," Amina replied. "When I saw you, Jabari, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time, a good heart. I knew I had to help you, just as you helped me." Jabari felt a deep respect for Amina. He had no idea how much she had been through, but he was grateful that she had shared her story with him. It made their bond even stronger. It also gave Jabari a sense of purpose, to help Amina succeed and to never forget how far they had both come from their darkest days. As Jabari's bond with Amina grew stronger, so did his sense of loyalty to her. He had learned about her painful past and admired her strength. She had come so far, from losing everything to becoming a successful businesswoman, and Jabari was determined to help her protect what she had worked so hard for. Over time, Jabari became more than just an employee. He was now Amina's trusted partner, and he began to feel a deeper connection to the business. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about building something meaningful and lasting, something that would honor both his and Amina's struggles. But even as things seemed to be going well, trouble was brewing on the horizon. Amina's former business partner, Lazarus Kibet, had been a key figure in her life before the betrayal that had cost her everything. He had taken advantage of her trust, stolen from her, and left her in financial ruin. Now, years later, Lazarus was back. He wasn't content with just walking away from the past. He wanted to take everything Amina had built for herself. Jabari first heard rumors of Lazarus's return when a rival company started making aggressive moves in their industry. He couldn't ignore the similarities between the new competition and Lazarus's old tactics. Something was off, and Jabari knew he needed to act fast. He began digging into Lazarus's recent activities and quickly realized that the man was behind the new business venture. Lazarus was trying to sabotage Amina's company, taking advantage of the fact that he knew her weaknesses from their past. Jabari was furious. He knew how much Amina had suffered because of Lazarus, and now he was trying to destroy everything she had worked so hard for. He couldn't let that happen. He decided to confront Amina about it. One evening, after a long day of work, Jabari sat down with Amina in her office. "Amina, there's something you need to know," he said, his voice serious. Lazarus is back, and he's not just lingering in the background. He's trying to ruin your business. I've been investigating, and I've found out that he's behind the recent competition. He's using old tactics to bring you down again. Amina's face hardened. Jabari could see the anger building up inside her, but there was also a trace of fear. She had worked so hard to rebuild her life, and now this man was trying to tear it all down again. I thought I'd left him behind, Amina whispered. But it seems he's not done with me yet. Jabari placed a hand on her shoulder. He won't win this time. We'll make sure of it. Together, we'll take him down. Amina nodded, her resolve strengthening. She knew that she couldn't let Lazarus win again. She had already lost too much to him once, and this time, she wouldn't let him destroy everything she had rebuilt. She looked at Jabari, grateful for his loyalty and determination. With him by her side, she felt like she could face anything. Let me know if you'd like to continue with the next outline. Yes. Here's the fifth outline, continuing the story. With the knowledge of Lazarus's return, Jabari and Amina began preparing for the fight of their lives. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was personal. Amina had trusted Lazarus, and he had taken everything from her once. This time, she would make sure he couldn't do it again. Jabari stood by her side, more determined than ever to protect everything they had worked for. They knew that they had to be strategic. Lazarus was a clever businessman, and his tactics were ruthless. He had a way of manipulating people, of using their weaknesses against them. But Jabari was no longer the man who had been struggling on the streets. He was a man of action now, ready to fight for what was right. They started by gathering information. Jabari spent days researching Lazarus's movements, his partners, and any loopholes in his business. Amina had already built a strong company, but they knew that Lazarus would try to exploit any vulnerability. They couldn't afford to let their guard down. Every detail mattered. Amina, with her calm and composed demeanor, took charge of the internal operations of the business. She worked with her team to ensure everything was running smoothly and that no one within the company would be swayed by Lazarus's lies or tactics. She also made sure that their customers were loyal, speaking to the key players who had helped her rebuild and making sure they knew that Amina's business was here to stay. Meanwhile, Jabari focused on legal and financial strategies. He knew that if they could hit Lazarus where it hurt, his finances and reputation, he would have no choice but to back off. They found discrepancies in Lazarus's dealings, and Jabari made sure that they documented everything. They were ready to expose him if necessary, but they hoped it wouldn't come to that. If they could stop Lazarus's business before it grew too powerful, they would have won the battle without ever needing to take it to court. The days turned into weeks, and as the pressure mounted, Jabari and Amina found themselves becoming even more connected. It wasn't just a business partnership anymore. They had shared their struggles and their dreams, and now they were fighting together for their future. Jabari could see the fire in Amina's eyes, the same fire he had seen when she first offered him the job. She wasn't the same woman who had been left with nothing. She was a warrior, and with him by her side, she was unstoppable. One evening, as they sat together after a long day of work, Amina turned to Jabari. "I don't know what I would have done without you," she said quietly. "You've shown me what it means to have someone who truly believes in you." Jabari smiled, his heart full. "You gave me a second chance, Amina. Now it's my turn to help you get the justice you deserve." The battle was far from over, but they were ready. They knew that Lazarus would stop at nothing to destroy them, but they were determined to make sure he wouldn't succeed. Together, they would fight to protect their business, their friendship, and the life they had both fought so hard to rebuild. The confrontation between Amina, Jabari, and Lazarus was inevitable. The months of preparation had finally led them to a breaking point. Lazarus, with his manipulative ways, had underestimated their determination. He believed that he could destroy what Amina had built, just as he had done before. But now, Amina had Jabari by her side, and the tables were about to turn. Jabari knew that the key to winning this battle was to stay one step ahead. As the competition between Lazarus's new business and Amina's company grew fiercer, Jabari continued to monitor Lazarus's every move. He kept track of the shady deals Lazarus was making with suppliers and partners, and slowly, they began to uncover evidence of fraud and unethical practices. This was the break they needed. They knew that if they could expose Lazarus for what he truly was, he would have no choice but to back down. One day, Jabari and Amina gathered in Amina's office, reviewing the evidence they had collected. The tension in the air was thick, but there was a sense of resolve between them. "We can do this," Jabari said, looking over the documents. "If we take this to the authorities, Lazarus will have no chance." Amina nodded, but she knew that exposing Lazarus might not be enough. He was a dangerous man, and he wouldn't go down without a fight. She remembered the way he had betrayed her all those years ago, leaving her with nothing. She had never forgotten the way he had broken her trust, and now, she couldn't afford to show any weakness. "We have to make sure he can't hurt anyone else," Amina said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "We have to make him regret ever crossing me." Jabari agreed. "This time, he won't get away with it. We'll make sure he faces the consequences of his actions." The plan was simple but effective. Jabari would take the evidence to the authorities, ensuring that Lazarus's fraudulent dealings were exposed for the world to see. Meanwhile, Amina would make sure her company remained strong, showing their clients and partners that they would not be intimidated. She was ready to fight, and she would do whatever it took to protect her business and the people she had worked so hard to build relationships with. The day they decided to confront Lazarus, they both knew it was the moment that would define their futures. As they prepared to make their move, Jabari could feel the weight of the situation pressing on his shoulders. He knew that this wasn't just about business. It was about revenge, about redemption, and about taking back control of their lives. Amina, too, understood the gravity of the situation. She had spent years building her business from the ground up, and she wasn't going to let Lazarus take it away from her again. The betrayal had hurt her deeply, but it had also made her stronger. She had learned the hard way that trust was something that had to be earned, not given freely. This time, she wouldn't make the same mistake. As the confrontation loomed, they both steeled themselves for what was to come. The battle for their future had begun, and there would be no turning back. The day had come. Jabari and Amina had gathered everything they needed to bring Lazarus to justice. They had the evidence of his fraudulent dealings, his manipulation of business partners, and his attempt to destroy Amina's hard-earned success. They knew that exposing Lazarus would change everything, but it wasn't going to be easy. Jabari, with the documents in hand, made his way to the authorities. He was nervous but determined. This wasn't just a business dispute. This was about righting a wrong that had been done to Amina, and to himself, as he now saw it. Amina had given him a chance when no one else would. She had trusted him, and now it was his turn to stand by her. The authorities, after reviewing the evidence Jabari provided, took swift action. Lazarus's illegal activities were undeniable. The authorities launched an investigation, and soon Lazarus's shady practices began to unravel. His business empire, built on lies and deceit, started to crumble. His partners pulled out, and his reputation, which he had once used to manipulate others, began to disintegrate. Amina watched the events unfold with a mix of satisfaction and caution. She had always known that Lazarus was capable of doing anything to get ahead, but seeing him finally face the consequences of his actions felt like a moment of victory. However, as much as she had waited for this day, she couldn't forget the years of pain Lazarus had caused her. The wounds of betrayal were still fresh, and seeing him in trouble didn't bring her peace. It only confirmed that she had made the right decision to fight back. The news of Lazarus's fall spread quickly. His downfall was all over the local media, and people who had once trusted him began to see the truth about the man they had followed. Amina's business, on the other hand, gained respect and admiration for standing strong against such a formidable opponent. She had not only rebuilt her life, but had also shown the world that she would not let anyone tear it down again. Jabari stood by her throughout it all, watching as Amina's company grew stronger. He had become more than just a manager. He had become a partner. And together, they had faced down the man who had once stolen everything from Amina. Amina, now relieved that Lazarus's hold on her life was finally over, turned to Jabari with a smile. "We did it," she said, her voice full of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you." Jabari smiled back. "You gave me a second chance, Amina. And now, we've both taken back what's ours." Amina was right. This wasn't just about business. It was about standing up for what was right, no matter how hard the fight. They had both been through their share of struggles, but now they stood together as victors. As they celebrated their success, Amina knew that the road ahead would still be challenging, but she was no longer afraid. She had learned the true meaning of resilience and trust. And with Jabari by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. With Lazarus now out of the picture, Amina and Jabari took a moment to reflect on all they had overcome. It had been a long, difficult journey, but they had both come out stronger on the other side. Amina's company was thriving, her reputation restored, and her heart lighter than it had been in years. She no longer felt the weight of betrayal holding her back. Instead, she was filled with a sense of peace, knowing that she had made the right choices and had the right people by her side. Jabari had also changed. The man who had once been jobless, struggling on the streets, now stood tall as a trusted business partner, someone who had helped take down one of the most dangerous figures in the business world. He had found not just success, but also purpose. His life was no longer defined by his past struggles. He had created a new path for himself, one built on trust, loyalty, and hard work. As the months went by, Amina and Jabari focused on the future. They worked together to expand the business, bringing in new clients and forming valuable partnerships. The company continued to grow, and their efforts began to be recognized by others in the industry. Amina's name, once tarnished by betrayal, was now synonymous with resilience, leadership, and success. But despite their professional achievements, the personal bond between Amina and Jabari grew deeper. They had shared so much over the past few years: the struggles, the pain, the victories. They had become more than just business partners. They had become true friends, and even more so, a family. They supported each other through everything, knowing that they could rely on one another, no matter what. One evening, as they sat together, discussing future plans for the company, Amina turned to Jabari with a thoughtful expression. "Jabari," she said, "I know we've come a long way, but I want you to know that I'm grateful for everything you've done. You've been more than just a partner to me. You've been my strength when I needed it the most." Jabari smiled, his eyes reflecting the same gratitude. "And you've given me more than I could ever have imagined. You gave me a second chance, Amina. You believed in me when no one else did." They sat in silence for a moment, both appreciating the journey they had been on and the bond they had built. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about trust, loyalty, and the understanding that no matter where life took them, they would always have each other's backs. As the days turned into months and their business flourished, Jabari and Amina began to realize that their lives were forever intertwined. They had helped each other find not just success, but meaning. And in doing so, they had created something far more valuable than wealth or power: a partnership based on mutual respect, understanding, and the belief that together they could overcome anything. As time passed, Amina and Jabari's business continued to flourish. They had become a well-known force in the industry, and their success was a testament to their hard work, dedication, and the bond they had forged through their struggles. Their company wasn't just profitable. It had become a symbol of resilience, a story of two people who had been knocked down by life but had found a way to rise again. But as their success grew, so did the challenges. New competitors started entering the market, and the pressure to maintain their position at the top became greater. Amina and Jabari had been through so much to get where they were, but now they were faced with the reality that their success was not guaranteed. The world of business was unpredictable, and they knew that they had to keep pushing forward if they wanted to stay ahead. One day, Amina called Jabari into her office for an urgent meeting. She had received some troubling news. Their main competitor, a well-established company with a lot of resources, was planning to launch a new product that could potentially outshine everything they had worked for. The product was innovative, and the market was already buzzing about it. Amina knew that if they didn't act fast, their company could be in serious trouble. "I've been thinking about this for a while," Amina said, looking at Jabari with determination in her eyes. "We can't let them take what we've built. We need to come up with something even better, something that will set us apart from the competition." Jabari listened intently, knowing that Amina was right. They couldn't afford to lose everything they had worked so hard for. But he also knew that they couldn't do it alone. They would need to rally their team, tap into their creativity, and come up with something truly groundbreaking. "We've faced challenges before," Jabari said, his voice steady. "We've come through every storm stronger than before. We just need to think outside the box and use everything we've learned. We can do this, Amina." Amina smiled, grateful for Jabari's unwavering support. "You're right. We've always been able to overcome the odds. Now it's time to do it again." The next few weeks were filled with brainstorming sessions, late nights, and endless meetings. Amina and Jabari worked tirelessly, pushing their team to come up with a new idea that would blow their competitors out of the water. They knew that this was their moment to prove that they were more than just survivors. They